President Corzo, go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We are calling to order at 5:31 p.m. and we will be recessing to closed session to discuss items 2.1, review non-public school non-public agency contract for the 2020-2021 school year. Item 2.2, Government Code 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated representative Dr. Joan Rosas, employee organization SMETA, CSDA, and/or SMEA. Item 2.3, Government Code 54957, public employee discipline dismissal release. And item 2.4, Government Code 54957, public performance goals evaluation title superintendent. If the discussion is not completed for 6 p.m., the closed session will continue following the regular meeting.
Okay, President Corzo, go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. We are reconvening to our regular meeting with nothing to report out of closed session, and we will begin our roll call. Trustee Chin.
Here.
Trustee Hitchcock.
Here.
Trustee Proctor. Here. Trustee Watkins.
Here.
And I am here, Trustee Corzo. Let the record reflect all trustees are in attendance. Moving on to approval of agenda September 10th, 2020.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote, Trustee Chin.
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock.
Yes.
Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. Moving on to approval of minutes for August 6th, August 20th, and August 25th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Trustee Chin.
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock.
Yes.
Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries. Moving on to our recognitions.
Beach Park Elementary School in Foster City opened on August the 17th, 2020. And even though it doesn't quite have a school building to go into, it certainly has a vibrant community. And we have our principal, Amy Snow, here tonight. She'd like to share a little bit of what they've been up to at the new Beach Park Elementary School. Welcome, Amy. Thanks for coming tonight and sharing a little bit about the school.
Thanks for having me. Good evening, everyone. We are super excited that Beach Park got to open and all the families were there on the first day. And I have to say how thankful I am to the community and to the teachers for making it such a success for these past 4 weeks. And we did create a little presentation for you, of course, because you always need a PowerPoint these days, right? Can't show up without a PowerPoint. So let me share my screen. Wait, sorry, I'm not used to Zoom yet. I'm very good at Google Hangouts now. So let's go to, sorry. I'm going to exit here. Wait, let me.
It was coming up, whatever you did. Started.
Amy, would you like to have me present? I can present for you.
I would love that, Peter, because I think, am I presenting right now? No. Yes? No.
All right, Peter will take
okay.
over.
That would be great, Peter. Thanks. Okay, thanks, Peter. So we started and, August 17th, just like everybody else. And we were so thankful to see that, we have a real address, we have a real phone number now, and we had real students come into our classrooms on the 17th. So sorry, Peter, I think it's the next one. So I think 2, yeah. Okay, here we go. So we have 74 students enrolled. We have 2 kinder classes with Mrs. Hernandez and Mrs. Brogdon. We have 1 first and second grade combination class with Mrs. Lazar, and we have 1 third grade class with Mrs. Lajos. And we were shocked when we had, because I was checking in with all the teachers, and we'll call the parents, like we had a plan in place. They're like, everyone showed up, everyone is here. And we had 100% attendance. We had 100% of our materials picked up. Later on that afternoon, we had our distribution of materials. One of the families were very nice and brought us a big box of donuts and said, thanks for, great first day. And we had back to school night the following day, and we had 100% of our community show up for that. So that was very excited, and teachers were grateful, and it was nice and we feel like we truly have a true partnership. Like, parents were giving us suggestions that we're like, that's a really great suggestion. And then we were able to implement them, and so I feel like it is a true partnership between our parent community and our teachers. On the next slide, Peter, we had a coffee chat that evening because we wanted to get them right away. Oh, that's our distribution. So we had the kids come in their cars, and we had this little sign on a yardstick. And so we were able to take their photos as they drove through the line. We had all the teachers out there, our AA and our librarian, and even our custodian was able to help out, pass out all the materials. So it went really smoothly. Kids also brought pictures and flowers for me and for their teachers. So that was really sweet too. They already, times that morning, but they were already like, you're my teacher, I love you, it's great. So then the next slide, so that evening we had a coffee chat just because we wanted to, work any kinks out and be able to see how it went. And this was some of their takeaways, because I had said, just like, how was the first day of school, right? What did you notice? And so these were some of their comments, and that the morning meetings are really helping build that community. They're really surprised to see their own students take on the learning. And I think that's the biggest shock for all of us parents, even with my own first grader. Like, he knows his password and his login and how to get into Zoom, and I don't have to do anything. Like, so we're just kind of all amazed, like, wow, that went really well. And they feel a sense of community. They really appreciate the digital citizenship, so that we're using the technology in a smart and respectful way. And they were really appreciative of the district and of the teachers to make it go smoothly. And the teachers all the time thank the district for such strong curriculum, that everything is there for them. They just have to utilize it and present it. But having strong curriculum is really supporting us along the way. And so then, sorry, Peter, next slide. Thanks. And our first, design thinking is our framework that we really want to build on, that we're design thinking school, and to have that that mindset with kids in how do we, problem solve. And so our first problem solving, our first design thinking project is creating a mascot for Beach Park. And it will be the students that will come up with it. And so we're going through, there's really 5 like design thinking steps, they say, but we threw in the 6th to the publish. And we are going to, of course, create a community event of it. They're going to share out on, we've created the family engagement night on the 14th of November. We'll invite you, and where they're going to present, and we'll have slideshows of all the students' mascot ideas and then the finalists who are going to share, and then we will be doing a Google form where people get to kind of vote, and we will have a committee, just kind of like what we did, the same format as we did with the naming. Same thing that we did with the naming, but with the kids, and so that they can have a part of that. And every grade's doing that. And then our next slide is our motto. This is what the teachers and I came up with our, you know, what kind of school do we want to create? What kind of culture? We read Teach Like Finland. We have been responsive classroom trained. We, you know, have used PBIS in our other schools that we came from. And so we really wanted something that was all encompassing of our mission and vision. So we use kindness, we use empathy, we are courageous. And we started incorporating that in our Monday morning meetings that we have school-wide, that I send out a video to them. Teachers play it for them too, for their asynchronous work. And we always touch upon the motto and give examples and talk about it and how we can put it into our everyday life. So that is going, it's catching on, and we hear parents, you know, we've gotten emails, especially from the kinder parents, saying that they love it when their kid can mimic the motto and go around the house and do the same hand gestures, and that they are smiling at that. So the kids have already started to memorize it when I come into the classroom and I ask them, do you know our school motto? And they can do it. So that's great. And when we started in the summer, we took a lot of time to try to build the community before we even got together. And this is one of the pictures that we all took to make a collage to share out our motto, and so that they would know what it is and know who their teachers are and know what we look like. So it was one of the many ways that we try to connect with them throughout the summer as we built up the school. So we have our next parent-family meeting night on the 14th, and we're looking forward to, you know, touching base with them again and giving them tips on how we can monitor kids' work through our, you know, Google Classroom and through our Seesaw. And then also hearing, again, how's it going for them and suggestions that they have. Any questions?
Yeah, what are the hand gestures for the motto?
Yeah, so the hand gestures are, we say we are kindness, we put it over our heart because, you know, your heart is kind. We use kindness, we use empathy because we have the weight of other people on our shoulder, and then we are courageous with our arms up like muscles.
Thank you. I love it.
Thank you so much, Amy, for coming. We're really pleased that the school has opened, and we can't wait until we can actually do a ribbon cutting on your building and usher the children in and have them be the first classes through the school. So congratulations on all the work, and we'll look forward to more.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Joan, for all the support. Thank you to all the board members for all the support, and the community. The Beach Park Elementary parents have just been extremely warm, extremely inviting and welcoming and supportive of us, even as we go through distance learning. And they're problem solvers. And so they problem solve with us. So it's really nice to have that partnership.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say, yeah, congratulations, Amy. I think it's fantastic. You know, when we had our last board meeting, we were 2 days into opening the school year, and it was sort of like, wait a second, you know, beyond distance learning and everything else, it's like we opened up a new school. Like, how did we not like say something about that? Even in our closing statements and our comments about everything that we went through this summer. But any normal year, we would have been like, we just, you know, we opened a brand new school. I mean, how often does that happen? And so I'm really glad that you guys were able to come out the second meeting of the school year to show, and, you know, just to give us a little feedback and background of the school. I think it's great. I can't wait to see, you know, when the school finally does actually open in person, or when we go back in person, to actually welcome kids onto the campus, which would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But but overall, I know that Foster City is sort of a long time coming, and with the Measure X money, it was a big deal. And to actually, even though it's still sort of in construction and we're in distance learning, the fact that we have actually opened up the school, and it is, virtually, at least, it's there. But, Foster City does have another elementary school, which I think it's fantastic. So I just wanted to say congratulations, and it's very exciting. I also did have the same question about the hand gestures when you said it. I thought that back to school placard with, being on a yardstick was a fantastic idea. I think it's just so great just to hear those things. So thank you to you and all your staff, and, I'm really excited.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I also wanted to say congratulations. I really like your motto, and kindness, empathy, and courage are very they're such great words, and they make me smile, and I'm so excited for you guys. And I really enjoyed the beach themed pictures of everybody during the summer. That was very cute. And I think that having such positive engagement from your families is you're starting off on the right foot, and having everyone be part of the community at Beach Park Elementary is really exciting. And so I live in Foster City, and I love seeing the school as it progresses, and it's definitely looking like a school, and I can't wait till it's open. Just even the way it is now, it looks beautiful, and something for our community to be really proud of. And so can't wait to see the kids playing there eventually, and all the exciting things that are happening at the school. So congratulations. Really excited for you and for all the students.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Many congrats, Amy. Thanks for being here to share a little bit more about how you guys are doing, and looking forward to hearing more and visiting the school one day.
Great. Thanks.
Noelia, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was double muted. I was just saying thank you so much. It's really exciting that you've gotten 100% participation, and I think we're all looking forward to the day that students can be back in the classroom and enjoy the new school. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I'm really excited for the finding out what the mascot is, and I absolutely love how you're just including the children in that. And I look forward to the November, I think you said 14th or 17th.
Yes, 14th. Yeah. Or I think 13th. Sorry, November 13th.
I think that's just one of the ways to show, like, you already have 100% community outreach and love in a family, and you're just continuing it by, implementing this, how to pick a mascot. And so I'm just, way to go. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And we are moving on to public statements. Public statements related to non-agenda topics. The San Mateo Foster City School Board cannot act upon any matter that has not been included and publicly posted on the agenda, except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. The board may refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes.
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, in Zoom, we use the raise your hand function to let us know that you would like to address the board for public statements. I will call on the person who is up, and then also the next person in line. As of right now, President Corzo, we have 2 people with their hands up for public statements. We have Sarah, and then after Sarah, we will have Joe. Sarah?
Hello. I don't know if you guys can see me. I can't tell.
That's okay. Just audio
Okay.
right now. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, awesome. No problem. I was just wanting to circle back and see if the email that was sent from Cynthia Newton was seen about the North Shore View priority. Sorry guys, it's been a long day. Whew. And just wanted to see, you know, make sure that that's staying on the radar, because I went to all the meetings last year and my son will be going in this next fall. So just wanted to circle back on that and make sure it stays on the radar. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Sarah. Okay, now we have Joe.
Good evening. Would it be possible if I was able to have my camera on?
Usually we just do, just for public comment, just audio, Joe.
Thank you.
I
That's
appreciate
fine.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Superintendent Dr. Rosas and board members, my name is Joe Spina, and I'm a social studies and avid elective teacher at Bayside Academy. I've been with the San Mateo Foster City School District for a little more than a decade. I'm honored to be a teacher here. I love my job. Currently, for many middle school teachers within the district, work time outside of contract hours has been increased in many cases due to distant learning necessities. As we face these unprecedented times, many teachers have been working beyond contracted hours to meet the challenges we face with distant learning. I personally work an average of 10 hours per week over my contracted time. When speaking with colleagues within the district, most, if not all of them, have admitted to working beyond their contract hours. One teacher in specific has admitted to working 20 hours over contracted time per week. I do understand that teachers fall under the Fair Labor Standard Act, or FSLA. However, I also know that reasonable compensation for this overtime work would be greatly appreciated by teachers. I'm not asking that all teachers submit their overtime hours to the district and receive a large check. I'm simply asking that we consider a stipend to let teachers know that we appreciate the effort they have been putting forth during these trying times. Let's keep in mind that many teachers have been working beyond contracted hours since the beginning of COVID without expectation for compensation for that time. Would it not build morale as well as strengthen the relationship between district and staff if we showed teachers how much their extra work has been appreciated? A colleague of mine once told me, "Don't complain unless I'm going to act." I understand that these issues are not always easy to resolve. I would therefore like to volunteer to assist the district, if necessary, in finding a realistic and effective way to compensate teachers. Again, my name is Joe Spina, and I love teaching middle school students at Bayside Academy for San Mateo Foster City School District. I will email you a copy of my statement as well as my contact information if I can be of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
President Corzo, we have no other hands up for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Okay, public statements related to agenda items, persons will be called on at the appropriate time. And moving on to Foundation Committee reports.
I'll go for the CDAC. Their next meeting on September 29th is going to be a very informative parent training opportunity there is going to be a presenter to discuss the IEP process and time for questions and answers regarding it. So attend. Thank you.
I have a few updates. I attended the PTA council meeting on August 24th. It was the first council association meeting of the year. It was on Zoom. Everybody kind of met each other. They discussed, one topic was that the PTA is accessing information from ARIES, from those families that have opted to share information. So that was one topic that came up. And another one was David Chambliss came and gave a preview of the learning I can't speak, but the new LCAP thing, sorry, I can't say it, which we'll hear more about tonight. and that was the PTA Council. And then we had a communications committee meeting where we again talked about ARIES and sharing information with the PTA. So that's in the works, and so hopefully PTAs will get the information that they need. And then we spent a lot of time talking about a potential Bayside Gym celebration in our virtual world that we're in now. And so stay tuned for more information about that, but we're thinking like a video or a virtual tour, some kind of fun, exciting way to share with the community the progress that's been done in that beautiful gym there. And then lastly, I attended the Foster City Liaison meeting with Dr. Rosas, and we gave them an update on school opening now that we're in distance learning. We talked about the meal program and how it's now for everybody that's 18 and under. And then we talked a bit about the geese abatement issue. And so we were sharing some ideas, or actually they were sharing some ideas with us and things that they've been trying. So hopefully we can collaborate with them in our schools and get that under control. I think they had some good ideas that they've tried. So those are my updates. Thank you.
I'm happy to go. I'll start off by talking a little bit about, let's see, where do I begin? Equity Task Force, I guess. And so Trustee Corzo and I had an opportunity to attend the first Equity Task Force meeting of the school year. Those have been scheduled monthly for the remainder of the school year. Nicole worked with the team again, and it was really an opportunity to kind of reflect on, to kind of just reset for this year, to, remember our purpose as a task force, each individual's purpose and becoming a member of the task force, digging into some logistical pieces. So needing to iron out, it's been almost 2 years that the task force has been up and running. And so, folks will be transitioning off, and how do we have new folks, and our students are now sophomores in high school, and what does that look like? And so kind of trying to solidify some of those processes, and then looking ahead to kind of what's upcoming, both in terms of board initiatives where there is a desire to have task force involvement, such as the SRO and school discipline resolution and their involvement in that work, and just North Central School and just other areas that we know are upcoming and where we need and want their input and involvement, and how we're going to develop kind of processes and structures around that. And then also the work that they've been engaged in with their subcommittees around instructional services, LGBTQ plus challenges in our schools, and staffing. And so, as you guys remember, they presented a couple of months ago about kind of where they were with that. And so, getting to a place where those groups actually are able to bring back some solid recommendations. So that was kind of the overarching premise of the task force meeting. And Noella, you can feel free to add if I missed anything. And then there was an Ed Foundation meeting, I think last week, looking at my calendar here. Anyways, irrelevant, between last meeting and this meeting. And so there's a very exciting announcement that you guys might have heard or seen already, which is that as you know, the Ed Foundation has been looking for an executive director to support the work, and they have found someone. So I'll now, Peter, if you could bring in Colleen Sullivan and Sonia, that would be great. And then I'll let Colleen take it away in terms of introducing.
Okay, sorry, I'm showing up as my husband. I would like to let you know about our new hire. I'm thrilled to announce our new part-time executive director is Sonja Tappan. She is an experienced professional with design and business operations experience. She grew up in Foster City and now lives in San Mateo. And she and her 4 children have all gone through San Mateo Foster City schools. So she's homegrown, she understands our community, she understands how our school district functions, and her first day was September 1st. And we are so excited to get started. Well, today's day 10. She's already rolling. She's talented. She's energetic. There she is. And she has really superior community knowledge and understanding of how our two cities work. And we could not be more pleased to welcome her. So thank you. Sonia, you want to introduce yourself? Or just say hello? Take yourself off mute.
Sure. So thank you. Thank you for your confidence and for having us at your meeting. We really look forward to partnering with you guys and furthering, strengthening all of the bonds that we've already set forth and making sure that all the students get everything and all the resources that they need. It's a great opportunity that we have in this district, and I look forward to setting a high bar and making sure that we have really good community involvement, not only in the parent level, but the community and strategic partners. So thank you.
Thank you guys for being here, and we're so excited to work with you. And thank you, Colleen and the team, for, I know there was a lengthy process, and so yeah, we're excited. I'll also share, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did somebody else have something they were gonna say? Okay, I was gonna, other parts of Ed Foundation. So another big piece is around the gala, which you guys know is upcoming on October 23rd. For those that are online, please save the date, October 23rd, Friday evening. We are, Trustee Hitchcock is finalizing our marketing and communications plan, which will be starting very, very soon. So please follow the Ed Foundation and the district on social media. There will be a lot of communication coming out that way in addition to newsletters, so please share widely. And, you know, RSVP to that Facebook event as soon as it goes up, and then official registration through Greater Giving, which is the site we'll be using for the auction, won't be up until October. And we're cranking along on sponsorships and making some good headway there. So a lot of community partners that are going to be supporting the gala. And so, you know, again, for those on the line, if you're interested in sponsoring or know somebody that might be interested in sponsoring, or if you're interested in getting involved in our committee, we meet every other week. So please reach out to myself and we can get that all squared away. So we kind of gave an update on that piece, and we're working with our liaison from the Ed Foundation, Marianne, who's, you know, supporting kind of that interplay. And so then some other updates, they're switching over to MailChimp, a new email system, and just kind of some other, I might be missing a couple of smaller things that were on the agenda, but those are some of the big ones and exciting ones. So I think that's all I have.
Just
I wanted to welcome Sonja, but now I don't see her on anymore. So I don't, yeah.
My apologies. Well, I thought we were done with that. Would you like me to bring them back in?
If they're still around. I don't see them on the attendees, so I'm not sure that you can.
I think they have dropped off. My apologies, President Corzo.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Well, I'll just say it. And yeah, I just wanted to share that I'm really excited for Sonia to be on board. I remember the first time that I met her was actually at like a coffee chat when I was campaigning. And yeah, we connected over the fact that we both went through the school district, and I'm just excited for her perspective and leadership. And, you know, we'll be working pretty closely together, and just looking forward to that. So welcome. And thank you, Shara, for your update as well.
So I just have a few updates. Over between the last board meeting and this board meeting, we did have 2 sanctuary task force meetings. And during the sanctuary task force meetings, we we hear sort of what's the pulse and what's going on with a lot of our immigrant and vulnerable families. There were two things that I wanted to bring up just specifically. One was regarding around meals. During the shelter in place and at the beginning and over summer, we were definitely supporting something like 14, actually grew from, let's say, like 800 to 1,000 meals a day to like 1,400 or so a day. But then at the beginning of the school year, with a lot of the regulations changing, it really dropped down to about 200 or 300 meals. And there was a problem and a concern that was brought up through the Sanctuary Task Force, because we have a number of teachers and paraeducators in the group who had mentioned that, some of their families, now that their parents have to go back to work, they weren't getting the food that they needed. So luckily, I will say that Andrew Solis, who is the head of our nutrition department, really stepped up, and his whole team, and they looked at trying to adjust the times for food pickup, and also the distribution in terms of location and just in general, just working to try and go above and beyond and thinking out of the box of how we feed our families. Trustee, I think Proctor mentioned that now the regulation did change within the last week or so, where we can now feed again families or individuals 18 and under. So it doesn't matter whether or not you have to show your student ID or be with a parent. We can provide foods for anyone who's 18 and under. Also, they changed the times from like 7:30 to 1:30 to pick up. And then overall, they're looking at actually food delivery too to some of the families. So they're, through the Sanctuary Task Force, there was a lot of concern that came up about food insecurity. And I will just say that Andrew and his team and, really have stepped up to try and solve that. But they're not stopping there. They're actually doing a survey now to reach out to the families with the understanding that surveys can't reach everybody. So they're going to do this phased approach of reaching out to the families who pick up food, and then also go to like maybe the newcomers and the newcomer series. So there's a whole bunch of things, and I just wanted to applaud them in the district and Joan about how the department and the whole staff is really stepping up to try and feed our families. So that was one other positive thing that came out over the last couple of weeks. Another thing that came up was technology issues. We're now into distance learning. What is this, our 4th week or so? And we have some technology issues with some of our vulnerable families. And there's one area where we have a lot of families who are staying at the Hillsdale Garden Apartments, right next to the Hillsdale Shopping Center. And so there was a question about whether or not they could truly get internet access through the hotspots. And so I gave an update today that we're actually trying to work with the property owner to see how we can boost Wi-Fi signal there for our families. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that it is a concern that has been raised at the Sanctuary Task Force, and it's something that we're trying to do and then we're looking into. So overall, the Sanctuary Task Force is really great in terms of trying to figure out what exactly the pulse is on the community, on our vulnerable community. And there are things that are happening and things that we're trying to make a positive impact there. Other committee reports, LMI, we had an LMI meeting yesterday. And overall, it was sort of the start of the new year for LMI. And so there was an introduction for all the new members of LMI, the Labor Management Initiative. And also we did sort of a debrief on distance learning, what was working, what wasn't. We gave a few tips about, how can we solve certain things. A lot of members brought up some questions, some individual questions and concerns that they were having. And so there was a lot of notes being taken, and so we can try and address some of those issues. We also just briefly talked about what it would take for us to come back, to, in person or through hybrid, but it was really just in general, just general conversation. So we did talk about sort of the colored system in terms of where the county's in purple right now, and, with the thought that at some point we'll move to red, but it was just very general. So overall, I will say that LMI, it's been really positive. And I would say that without LMI, I don't think we would be in the position we are now with a great collaboration between our staff and teachers and the district. So I just want to bring that up. But thanks.
Okay, I think that's it for committee reports. Everyone already reported out on the ones that I attended, so thank you for that. Moving on to announcements.
I'll announce that I had the pleasure, along with Superintendent Rosas, Dr. Rosas, we were able to visit the City of San Mateo's King Center. I forgot the official name, but essentially it's a learning pod where they brought in a lot of the families. In fact, it was 46 families or students from the neighborhood, mainly Powell families who they did the initial invite to. And they opened up the King Center and basically put a number of students in their classes, and they have a lot of adult supervision and a lot of help. And it was very exciting to see. And I know I'm seeing Annex, I think tomorrow, and I know some of us have seen Annex, and I think it's very similar for what we're doing, but it was a really great feeling to see how the City of San Mateo has stepped up and partnered with us in supporting our very vulnerable students. And so I want to thank them for that as well and just bring it to everyone's attention.
Allison, did you want to talk about Annex then?
Sure. Yeah, so similarly, Dr. Rosas and I went to Fiesta Gardens and visited the annex there. And again, it was some groups of students that were socially distanced, sitting at their desks with their laptops and their headphones on. It was very cute to see everybody focusing in on their classrooms. And again, these are different age children, so they're not necessarily in the same class. Some of them may not even go to the same school, but they are together. I think they did say there were a few people that are in the same class, so they actually got to physically see a classmate both on the screen and maybe sitting right next to each other, which was nice. So they're using 2 classrooms there, plus their multi-purpose room, which has plenty of space where students were able to spread apart and do their work. So it was nice to see kids and nice to see kids learning and really engaged with their distance learning that way. And there was several staff members there to supervise, and we learned that, you know, the kindergartners did need some extra help. So there was more help in that room with adults, making sure that they were in the right place and that they were able to access all of their classes. So it was very nice to see everybody.
Okay, any other announcements? No? Okay. Moving on to superintendent report.
We're just about starting the 7th month of the pandemic work, and we're also experiencing what I'm hearing is called the worst fire season in history. So it is times like these where our coordinated effort, our willingness to work together becomes even more important. And we're really thankful for our community. We're grateful for the collaboration among members of our school community in setting up the distance learning programming. We are hearing that families are experiencing a very different kind of education, not the emergency education of the spring. We know there's still more work to be done. As Trustee Chin alluded to, there were many points of discussion at our LMI about where we are with distance learning and what else do we need to do. But we're appreciative of where we have gotten to at this point. We also are appreciating the responses of our families to the recent survey that we sent out. There were some very thoughtful ideas in that survey, and could be very helpful as we move forward. So we're thankful for people taking the time to respond to yet another survey. The district is committed to examining where we are in terms of distance learning at the 6th, 10th, 14th weeks of school in order to determine next steps. So staff will bring recommendations to the board for consideration at our next board meeting. I did want to reiterate how important the community partners have been. If you would think back, there was a period of time when only preschool and child care centers could open. And at that time, we really leaned on our child care providers to provide support for our students during the school day, because they were the ones who were going to be able to open. We weren't going to be able to open. And we continue to meet as a community partner group and really do appreciate the variety of options. We mentioned a couple tonight, but there are over 20 providers that are meeting regularly to support our children throughout our two cities of Foster City and San Mateo. So a real thank you, appreciation to them. As was also stated, our nutrition department started in the summer. They did their usual summer program where anyone 18 years or younger can pick up meals. Now, normally what happens is when school starts, then it has to be students in our district who can pick up the meals. Well, the federal government reversed that decision and said that we could continue to provide meals to anyone 18 years and younger. So immediately the next day, our nutrition staff began providing meals for anyone 18 years and younger. So I do want to remind everybody, there are distribution sites, our Lead, College Park, Laurel, Foster City Elementary, and Sunny Brae from 7:30 to 1:30. And we are also able to pack multiple days at a time, and there are some delivery options if those pickup times and places don't work for you. And I want to thank our director, Andrew Solis, and his committed nutrition services staff who have worked all summer and continue to provide these meals for our community. So thank you. A question was brought up at one of my coffee chats about puberty and teen talk. We ended up not providing that curriculum in the spring, and we are now going to provide that curriculum to the students who missed it. 6th grade science teachers will do puberty talk this fall. 7th grade science teachers will do teen talk in the spring. And 8th grade science teachers will be doing teen talk in the fall. So just letting you know that even though they missed it during our period of crisis, we're getting back to our normal patterns of providing that curriculum. And finally, I just want to remind people that the census is ongoing. It is important. It is how our cities receive funding. And the count that's taken during this period of time, it's the count that we use for 10 years. So it's a very important count. And our Board of Supervisors, the city manager, they would very much like to see, the county manager would very much like to see everyone participate. So if you haven't participated in the census, do know that every person counts. And we do receive funding for our cities through that venue. So with that, I will close my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Rosas. And we are moving on to our, before we move on, solo quiero recordarles que si ocupan traducción, si tenemos traducción, ya sé que tenemos una persona que está escuchando la traducción, pero si hay alguien más, por favor, usen el botón donde dice más y pueden escoger para interpretación ahí. Just reminding folks that we do have Spanish translation available, so please hit the more button or the button that says interpretation, and you can access it that way. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items be removed and discussed from the consent agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any recommended consent item is appropriate at this time.
Okay, if there are any attendees that are joining us tonight and have a particular or want to make public statements on anything of the on the agenda for consent, please raise your hand now. Okay, President Corzo, there are no hands raised to pull items from the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. However, I'd like to make a comment before we vote.
I'll second.
Great. So I've looked over just the Measure X projects and the change orders. I think they're fine. I don't have a problem with it. One thing that I would love to do, and I know we have an item for future agenda items, but as it relates to the Measure X items right now and the change orders, is I'd love to get, I know we had an update on the Measure X projects. I think it was the last meeting and the meeting before, but I'm wondering whether or not we could get another update with just the general timelines or the completion timelines of the current Measure X projects and the tentative start dates of maybe the phase 2 Measure X projects. I know that, obviously we had a recognition with Beach Park Elementary and, the thought was, we may be a couple months into this school year. I just would love to know just generally just where we are at every single one. Obviously Bayside, I believe the Bayside Gym is done, but it'd be great to have just sort of a public acknowledgement that where we are with those. And then as we move into phase 2 with with Sunny Bray and George Hall, and then also Bowditch, it'd be really great to actually have something that we can share publicly to say that this is what's going on in phase 2. So I know that there's again an item for future agenda items, but as it related to this, the Measure X projects and the consent items, I just wanted to bring that up. So, and those are my comments.
Thank you. A roll call vote, Trustee Finn?
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock?
Yes.
Trustee Proctor?
Yes.
Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries. Moving on to item 7.1, resolution number 4, 2021 in support of Proposition 15.
In February 2020, board member at the board meeting, trustees passed resolution number 1920. It was called at that time Funding for Schools and Communities First Act. The act is now known as Proposition 15. It has a proposition number, and I was asked to bring another resolution to the board for review and potential approval. So you have a resolution in front of you. It is very similar to the one you passed earlier, but it does now have an actual proposition number.
Thank you so much. Let me pull that up. I would be interested in having us read it. I do think it's an opportunity to inform the community and our attendees about what it is and why it's important. How does everyone else feel about that?
Sounds fine to me.
That sounds
Okay. Okay, so why don't we follow the roll call vote order?
Okay. This is resolution 420-21 of support for Proposition 15, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020. Whereas for 4 decades, school districts in California have experienced underinvestment and devastating cuts, causing California's school funding to fall behind and resulting in fewer services and resources for students and teachers.
Whereas the lack of adequate local funding is the result of an inequitable tax system in which corporations and wealthy investors do not pay their fair share in property taxes.
Whereas loopholes in California's property tax system allows a fraction of major commercial and industrial properties to avoid regular reassessment.
Whereas these loopholes result in millions of dollars going to corporations and investors rather than to schools and local communities for essential services.
Whereas experts estimate that Prop 15, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020 reclaims $12 billion in property tax revenue every year to ensure that our schools and communities have the resources to educate all of our kids and the services to support all of our families.
Whereas Prop 15, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020 does not affect property taxes for homeowners or renters because the initiative exempts all residential property.
Whereas academic researchers at the University of Southern California, USC, demonstrated that a majority of commercial owners already pay close to market value, making the current system inequitable among businesses, benefiting large owners who have had land for a long time.
Whereas USC research has identified that the vast majority of reclaimed revenue will come from a fraction of large commercial and industrial properties.
Whereas additional nonpartisan research has determined that the top 10% of the wealthiest corporate property owners will generate 92% of the revenue for Prop 15.
Whereas California schools are falling behind, ranking lowest in the nation with the largest number of students per teacher and the fewest counselors per student.
Whereas per pupil funding has declined from the top 10 in the nation to 39th.
Whereas the top ranked state spends $10,259 more per pupil to educate their children than California spends.
Whereas the measure invests up to $4 billion annually for K through 14 schools to ensure that our kids receive world-class education they deserve.
Whereas California should be a leader in innovation by educating the next generation of students to compete in the global economy.
Whereas Prop 15, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020 guarantees funding to all school districts over and above Proposition 98 funding and following the local control funding formula to all students in need in all districts.
Whereas the measures also provides billions in funding yearly for cities, counties, and special districts in locally controlled revenues for affordable housing, parks, libraries, emergency responders, and essential workers, health and human services, libraries, public infrastructure, and much more.
Whereas the measure incentivizes the development of residential units and provides more funding for communities to invest in affordable housing.
Whereas the measure provides new tax incentives to spur new investment in small businesses by eliminating the business personal property tax on equipment for California's small businesses.
Whereas the measure also exempts all small business owners whose property is worth less than $3 million.
Whereas the measure levels the playing field for businesses that already pay their fair share in our communities.
Whereas now more than ever, in light of the national and state economic crisis precipitated by COVID-19 global pandemic, California schools and community colleges require additional revenue for the continued provisions of education and services to the children, youth, and families of California.
Therefore, be it resolved that the San Mateo Foster City School District endorses Prop 15, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act of 2020, a measure on the California ballot in November 2020.
Adopted by the governing board of the San Mateo Foster City School District at the regular meeting held on the 10th day of September of 2020 by the following vote.
Okay, do we want to move on to a vote, or do we want to share our comments?
I just wanted to share one thing just to point out that our school district, it's anticipated that it will generate almost $7 million in revenue for the district. And so obviously that's significant, and you know, just something for the public to be aware of in terms of how this will actually impact us locally.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins. I did forget to ask for public comment on this item, so if anyone from the public would like to comment on this, please raise your hand. Okay. Not seeing any hands raised, right, Peter?
That is correct, President Corzo. We have no hands raised at this time.
If there's no other comment from the board, we'll make a motion. Is there any other comment?
I can make a comment motion too. What? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, other than yes, it is severely needed. That's all.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution number 04-2021 in support of Prop 15.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Chin?
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock?
Yes.
Trustee Proctor?
Yes.
Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Let me pull up our agenda. Okay, moving on to consultant for the new school in North Central San Mateo, request for professional services, yeah, I'm not sure if that's a title.
You know, we are very fortunate to have the opportunity to open not just Beach Park Elementary, but a new school in North Central. Doesn't happen all the time, and I'm looking forward to this new project. So how did this come about? The Next Steps Advisory Committee held 55 town halls and forums with the San Mateo and Foster City communities on behalf of the school district in order to provide an overview and the need for facilities related to increasing enrollment. In addition, 4,692 community members and staff responded to surveys. All of this information was gathered, and the Next Step Advisory Committee presented a report to the Board of Trustees in June of 2015. In August of 2015, the Board of Trustees voted to place a bond measure on the November ballot, and that was to provide facilities at Rel, Abbott, Bayside, Bowditch, and the two elementary schools of George Hall, Sunnybray, and to open two schools, one in Foster City and one in San Mateo. The school in North Central was to be a small elementary school on the corner of a district-owned parcel, North Humboldt Street and East Poplar. As you know, the majority of students in North Central are bused to schools in other neighborhoods in the district, which is part of a voluntary desegregation effort that began in the 1960s. The Next Steps Advisory Committee, or the Next Steps Committee, yeah, it was an advisory committee, recommended that the new school be planned for about 250 students who are K-5, who lived in the neighborhood. This work was completed just about 5 years ago, and the current board had wished to engage a consultant to bring forward recommendations and options for a successful educational program for the new school. And as part of the process, the board had discussed having this consultant gather community input through listening center sessions with families and also with key stakeholders. So in order to reach a variety of consultants and to see who might be the best match for our district, we have written a request for professional services, and it delineates the project background that I just read to you, a little bit about the description of what is desired, a scope of work, specific tasks, what we need from them as far as their resume and background, and then an anticipated time frame. So I bring this to you because if there's anything that you feel is missing or maybe is not stated clearly that you would like to change, now's the time. And I can take that direction. And then we do have some people who are interested. And so we'll start sending this out to different consulting groups, individuals who might like to do this work for us. So tonight I'm asking for your review, and if you find this to be a pretty good summary of what you've asked for, that's fine. If there's something missing, please let me know.
Is this our only time to provide input into just ideas or any comments, or will we have another opportunity when a consultant is chosen?
So the scope of the work is that the consultant would provide educational program options based on successful research-based inclusive programs to the Board of Trustees. So you would hear about some options that this consultant would begin with. It is not the only thing that anyone in the community would hear. They could come back with other ideas, but it's the idea of having something to share. Here are some ideas that other schools have considered, other districts have considered. So when the consultant does that work with you on program options to the board for board consideration November 5th, that would probably be a time for you to weigh in on program conversations.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple thoughts. One is, and I don't think it explicitly says it or explicitly doesn't say it, but one thing I just want to make sure is included in the scope is, you know, that the recommendation is for the 250 school. I would want to make sure that the consultant has broad knowledge of, you know, College Park being located also on that campus, the capacity of College Park, other spaces in the district, right? Like that they wouldn't necessarily feel limited in terms of community outreach to that, and that there might be other options that would be presented, and that we're also thinking about the fact that College Park is on that campus, right? And so that could mean a lot of different things in terms of recommendations and proposals. But I just want to make sure that that's clear, that they're not limited in scope to just what instructional programs could you do at this 250 student school.
Okay.
What instructional programs do we want to support? But I think like the guiding question is more around what is the best setup and what instructional services are going to best support the students in this community. That might be this, it might be broader, right? And that to me didn't stand out super explicitly, so I think that would be helpful.
Added under project description, that it doesn't have to be limited necessarily, that it just is
I think the
program possible.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. And then a smaller thing is just under the scope of work. There was wondering if we can also add Sanctuary Task Force into the group of individuals that would be in addition to the Equity Task Force and Ed Services. And I also wonder if there's, I know it talks about key community stakeholders. I wonder if we want to be a little bit explicit in, and maybe, I don't know, interested to hear what other folks think about what kinds of community stakeholders specifically we're interested in. And also wondering about, in addition to Ed Services, if there are teachers and staff that are both representative of our kids and families in North Central, and also who have worked with students who might have additional insight. So wondering if we can kind of add those pieces. And then the last piece I'll say, and I think it said here, I guess my holdup is that we don't really cycle back to it. So it talks about the research-based piece, which I know I shared a lot about kind of when we originally started this conversation. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the scope of work, how we cycle back to that after we've engaged in community sessions, right? So this is what works, here's what we've heard. My assumption is we're then marrying, this is what works, this is what we've heard, and so this is kind of what works as it pertains to what we've heard that we're gonna propose, but it doesn't explicitly say that either. So my assumption would be that that would be what would happen. I just wanna make sure as we're thinking about this that we really are making decisions based on what we know is working, and not, I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to say this. Yeah, so it's marrying both of those things, right? It's marrying community input and what individual people want and believe, which can be kind of this an emotional response, which is valid and relevant and really important. And there's this other piece of things that I just think is really important. So, and then I know that I've mentioned this before in terms of someone specific, so hope that they're on the list, but would love for this to be shared with Dr. Nogueira and his team. So just wanting to put that out there.
And I'll chime in, sorry, if in addition to that, because that's kind of where my question was coming from, if we should be able to say what we want now in terms of considerations. And I don't know how like survey regarding number of students, what it is now. I know it said there's like approximately 900 students that live in the area, but was that from 2015 or is it now?
Present.
Okay. And then just how many of those students currently go to College Park and how many are interested in continuing or want access to a Mandarin immersion program there. And just, again, looking kind of outside of the strict 250, like Shara said, perhaps, you know, there's Knowles to consider or expanding College Park at its current site, you know, just to look at other options as well.
President Corzo, I have comments as well. I wasn't sure if you wanted to take public comment first or if there's any, or ask the question if there's one before providing comments, or do you want me to go?
No, you're right. Let's take public comment. Thank you.
Okay, for those that are joining, if you'd like to make public comment on this particular item, please use the raise your hand feature within Zoom now. President Corzo, so far we have one person for public comment, two. First up will be Randy, and then after Randy will be Marcella. President Corzo, time?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. First up, Randy.
Hi, good evening, board members and Dr. Rosas. I'm really happy to see movement on this discussion and an engagement of facilitator. I think this is really important, and I'm interested in seeing a really great person brought in to help with this process. One thing that and this is kind of following up on what Trustee Watkins was asking about, but specifically when you're talking about facilitated meetings with families and key community stakeholders, right? That's the verbiage that's used in the RFP as it's stated. When I go to the agenda and I see what was written in the agenda that says, the current Board of Trustees wishes to engage a consultant to bring forward recommendations and options for a successful educational program for the, wrong one. As part of this process, the board would like to have the consultant gather community input through listening sessions with families and key stakeholders in the North Central community. So I would, if you're so inclined, I would like to know some clarification on who exactly you're looking for input from, right? And who you want involved in this discussion. Because, yeah, it's important for the community that is going to be really the catchment population for who this school is going to serve, certainly. But also, depending on the direction that these decisions, like the cascade that these decisions might follow, this could affect other communities and other schools potentially. And I can just see the kind of storm that would brew and the kind of outrage that could happen and the kind of things that could get stopped up. And so I just wonder if, yeah, I just wonder, like, thinking more ahead instead of like, you know, a fire prevention mode instead of a firefighting mode. So just putting that out there. And again, thank you for taking this on.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, next we have Marcella.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow off of Randy's comment, the identification of key stakeholders. I'm a little concerned with 12 hours of facilitated meetings. I worry that that isn't going to capture that those preventative discussions that Randy is talking about. I think that if we have identified there are 900 students in North Central San Mateo, 12 hours would be very difficult with a demographic that is so diverse as that community is. I wanted to highlight also the content. The word that's used frequently is inclusive, which I love, except I worry that it can be, it can overshadow some of the specific equity issues that need to be addressed in the area of North Central San Mateo. And then when we look at evidence-based practice or research-based programs, I want to be really cautious because there are programs all over the place that have data based on corporate funding models that they can show data that doesn't necessarily reflect the success of a school, the overall health of a school, and all of the concerns that we have about how to build and design a successful program. So I'd like to maybe suggest that in the content of the proposal, as people are being asked to submit the resume, the letter of interest, that somewhere in there be included a philosophy of education, a belief of education, some sort of kind of pedagogical or evidence-based background of where their standing is, because yes, they're going to meet with the Equity Task Force, but I think it would be very helpful to have that dialogue and understand where people are coming from before they even get to the point of being hired. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, President Corzo, we have no other hands for public comment at this time.
Thank you. I just wanted to check in. I'm wondering if anyone that is using the Spanish translation would like to comment. And I'm not sure if they show up here or how that works exactly.
So all the participants and the attendees, anybody who would like to make public comment are able to use the raise your hand function. And what would happen is through our testing, they would communicate with Angela, and then Angela could do the translation in the English channel for the rest of us.
Okay. Okay, so not seeing any more hands, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so let's move on to discussion. I'll start really quickly. I just want to say and address something that was kind of brought up. Sorry, this is a little difficult for me because it's something that just did not sit well with me when I read it in the Next Steps Committee report. But for those that have not read this report, in the report, it did say that one of the future uses of this small school on the corner that was supposed to be, or is supposed to be for the North Central community, that if it did not work out, that it could then be used to expand College Park. And I grew up in North Central, I'm from North Central, and that is just so offensive to me. So I just want to put it out there that I think under no circumstances should a school that has pushed students from the community out of its school within its own neighborhood, like I don't think that school should expand in that community in that way. So I just want to say, like, I don't think that should be on the table at all. I do recognize, though, that there should definitely be a community process. I really like what some folks have said around making sure that it's specified in the contract who we want the bulk of the engagement to be from, and that's our students and our families that are being bussed out of their own neighborhood because of decisions in a practice that started many, many years ago, and that has not proven to be giving them, to have given them much better educational outcomes. I remember when we started this conversation a while back, I felt really strongly that, we should give the North Central community, the students and the families there, the opportunity to think big about everything that they would want in their dream school and not limit them to a small school on the corner lot. And the reason I keep repeating that is because if you drive and you see College Park and you see the Child Development Center and then you see the little lot on the corner, like, to me, just like being from that community, like it upsets me so much, to be honest. But I understand, right? Like that's not, because it upsets me, that's not how we're going to make decisions, but I want to be transparent about that also. Anyways, yeah, I think that in the way that the contract is written now, it doesn't, I don't think it's clear enough. I think it is leading towards the Next Steps Committee said that there's going to be this small school. And so that kind of implies that that is what it should be limited to. So I would like to see more language in there that kind of opens it up and allows for, potential consultants to understand clearly that they're not being limited in that way. We really want to look at what is best for this community, period, and not limit to just a small school in the corner lot. I really liked what Marcella said around asking for a pedagogical, I'm not saying that word right, sorry. I don't think I can say it right. I need to read it.
Philosophy of education statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that idea. I also, the 12 hours kind of stood out to me as well. I know that if we ask for more hours, that will likely mean that we'll get a bigger, it'll cost more money, but I think maybe there's a way to kind of open it up a little bit, like 12 to 20, like just maybe have like a range instead of a concrete number. I agree with Shara, let's throw in the Sanctuary Task Force, just because I know that group is really close to a lot of Spanish speaking families and the needs that they have, and has done a lot of work on that. And yeah, that's it for now. I'm going to let other folks talk, and then maybe I'll have more to add, but thank you.
I just want to chime in to, yes, it stated like the 250 students, but hopefully, it's expanded to think more, think bigger. I guess for the students that wouldn't be able to attend because of the numbers allowing for actual enrollment on site versus not, and clearly there's a lot of students moving forward, what would the outlook be for those students who would not necessarily be able to enroll in their neighborhood school? I know that we kind of touched on this like a year or so ago when we were discussing equity, and just kind of wanted that to, if that is something that could be discussed when the consultant comes in. And then regarding hours, same. I think 12 needs to be upped. And then also too, depending on what it is, if it's at a range, if we could just even say with possible, amending if work is not completed.
I'll just quickly say I agree with the comments that have been said. I was also hung up on the 250 number that was in here, and I was kind of thinking like what comes, like chicken or the egg type thing. What comes first? Do you design a program, or do you have the facility? So I like the idea of expanding this to potentially include 900 students or whatever it's going to be. So designing a program for thinking bigger than beyond what the Next Steps program says. So those are my thoughts, but I agree with what everybody else said.
I have just two, I guess, major comments or additions. One, just in terms of the public outreach effort, when I look at this and I think about Measure X as a whole, the reality is I feel like that the North Central School is really like a phase 3. We've kind of lumped it into phase 2, but in reality, when you're building a new school, it's going to take some time, and it's on a different timeline than Bowditch and Sunnybury and George Hall, because we can go ahead and submit plans to DSA and go ahead and move down that track. For the North Central School, in some ways, we're kind of reverting back to the old, not reverting back to the old Turnbull, but reverting back to looking at a neighborhood school. And I think in order to do this and asking what kind of programs to be, for the school to be successful, is we're really trying to build a community there who buys into the school. And the reality of the situation is that just when we look at Beach Park Elementary, we're not going to be building and having the students there next year. The reality is you're looking at, by the time you go through this process, and if you build a new school, by the time you submit it to DSA, you're looking at, by the time we do the construction, you're looking at 2, 3, maybe 4 years down the road when it actually opens. And so when we go ahead and do the outreach, when you look at those 12 hours or 12 to 20 hours, we really got to make sure that we reach out to the really younger families, even those families who might not be in our district right now, because those are the families who may actually end up going to that school. Any children who are currently in elementary school, they won't be going there. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of the timeline of this project. And so when we think about building the community, we have to think about, like, who is the community at the time? And if we're asking just our current students, we may be asking the wrong group, or the current families. So that's one. And then the second is, when I look at the timeline and I think about this project and the consultant, the sort of the deliverable to us, you know, what I would like to see in terms of the scope of work is a preliminary implementation plan. Because, you know, we can come up with this whole plan, but without actually implementing it is another story. And so what I would love to do, and it could be just general timelines, but here, if they come forward and if the board approves this, whatever the project, whatever the way we're going in January, it's like, what are the next steps? Okay, we're going to do DSA approval. We're looking at this construction. You know, here's how we need to go back and reach back to the community. You know, we're going to go ahead and create this great thing, get this great buy-in from the community, and we're not going to talk to them again for like 4 or 5 years. I would rather us go back and do, is there an annual checkup, you know, an annual progress, something to make sure that we keep that buy-in, to make sure that we keep the, you know, all the good work that we did or that we're going to do in terms of the community outreach sort of fresh in our minds. The last thing I want to do is have the issue that we had with the Montessori programs, where, you know, we went down and said this, here's the direction we're going, and then we don't hear from, no one hears from us for 3 years or so. You know, the idea is there should be some implementation plan where we, the board, go back to the public who we've reached out to and said, this is what the current process is at this moment. And so that's the only addition that I would add to the scope of work. But overall, I think, you know, I think it's a great process. I think we need to go out ahead and look at what program is going to be successful the most there. Because the last thing I want to do is open up a new school and then, you know, watch it fail. So I think by getting the right program, getting the community to buy in, I think we can really be successful here. So those are my comments.
One other thing I think is I know that it's built in if it's over a certain amount, which I anticipate these will be, kind of given the scope of work, but hard to say. I think it would be great for all of them to come back to us. This is just it's so important. And so who the consultant is, I just feel like we should have a discussion about the individuals and make sure, you know, if you can provide your recommendation, this is our top person, these are our second 2 people, or something along those lines, so that we're able to ensure that there's alignment, and that we're not having someone that's hired that then we're not, you know, happy with, and we're having to reconfigure or whatever. So I think that'll be important. I would like to request that happen regardless of amount.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So plan on another board meeting.
The other thing sorry, this has been swirling around in my mind. I'm not actually sure if it's relevant right now, but I'll just say it real quick just in case. I do think it would, one of the things I think about with, as a possibility for kind of the program and some of the elements that might be considered are things that are really outside of the box, and things that are include things like longer school days, et cetera, that would be something that we'll be working with our unions around. And so I'm wondering if that needs to be part of the scope of services as well in terms of engaging, I don't know at what point in the process, but starting to have those conversations with our union leadership around that piece, as just because I think I would like to see us think about those kinds of things. And I know that that is going to, you know, and should be a conversation that we have with our teachers and staff. So just something else that's kind of swirling around. I don't know how exactly that fits in, but just something for us to keep in mind.
Okay, I have some updates to do, and I will add these pieces. One question I have is that you questioned who the key stakeholders are, and we could delineate some of them right now. That we know we want to ensure are included, and then it could include other people. But we could say key stakeholders such as, and I would suspect it would be Handsome, the homeowners association there. It probably would include some of the church, our faith partners who have been so involved in this project. Would there be others that you would like me to specifically list at this time?
Our community partners.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where we would include future or current neighborhood families that would attend or go possibly attend?
Well, we definitely have families listed, and it's families from the neighborhood. And I definitely hear what Ken's saying is make sure that we don't just have older kids, that we reach out to kids who have, to families who have young children, so families in the neighborhood. But key community stakeholders, if there were any in particular that you wanted to be sure I listed, I could do that now. That could always be added later. I mean, we could tell them who they are. Whoever's coming in is probably not going to know all of them anyway. We'll probably be asking. So
yeah, my main concern.
I'd like to include Peninsula Family Service. They're local and they do early education.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to make sure that the outreach that we do really reaches everybody in the neighborhood. I mean, I just don't want anybody to, like, you know, I don't want us to go over, you know, and glance over and kind of forget a community that maybe doesn't necessarily reach all the time. So that's my concern, and in a variety of methods as well, you know.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And we also list Boys and Girls Club.
Mm-hmm.
Homework Central.
Mm-hmm.
All those folks.
Yeah.
We have a list already.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I have lots of direction. Let's get it out there. Let's get this show on the road. This is going to be fun. Another new school. And not so very long, we'll have a principal sharing all about their new school and their first day.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to our public hearing for learning continuity and attendance plan. So I am officially opening our public hearing for our learning continuity and attendance plan. Do
Although
we have any public comment?
Although not very different than our public comments, those that would like to make and address the board on this particular public hearing, please raise your hand now.
It actually makes better sense to be able to hear David's presentation, but it's just one of those things they told us that we needed to do. So.
Okay, President Corza, look, we have any comments for public hearing?
Sorry, Peter. Yeah, we don't have any comments, so I'm going to close it, but please know that you will still be able to provide public comments after you actually hear the presentation. And the public hearing is now closed on this item. Moving on to our 2021 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan.
Okay, and Assistant Superintendent David Chambliss and Assistant Superintendent of Student Services Sarah Drinkwater have spent virtually the entire, I don't know how long, I think they've lost track of how many hours writing this plan. As you know, it was not something that we expected to write, but it was requested in this very strange time for a one-year plan, how we were going to educate the students, what were the funding sources we were going to use, and it needs to be turned around in a very rapid manner. So I do appreciate all the work, and then all the staff members who have been feeding them the information to put into this plan. So there's been a lot of people involved. So thanks to both of you. I think David is presenting, and we're happy to answer and make any changes. Tonight's a good opportunity to review where we are at this point. So I'll leave it to you now.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Rosas. Good evening, board and community members. Yes, so as Dr. Rosas began to introduce, the state, as part of the trailer bill to the funding for our 2021 school year, under obviously these unusual COVID circumstances, has required the district to complete what's called the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. The acronym has an unfortunate overlap with our regular local control accountability plan, which is the yearly plan that we complete, that is often called the LCAP, which is sort of the strategic plan for the year. This plan, we're going to shorten it and call it the Learning Continuity Plan, just to try to avoid confusion, is meant to be a one-year substitute for the typical local control accountability plan. I do want to note that earlier in the year, the state gave us the guidance that we were still going to complete the regular LCAP and that it would be due in December. When we got that information, we also adjusted the timeline for schools to complete their site plans for student achievement, which is the sort of equivalent strategic plan for each of our school sites, to align with that. So that SIPSAs would be done along with the completion of the first interim budget and with originally planned the district's LCAP. We are going to continue to hold that timeline for the school site plans that we will be coming to you in November and December with those plans, but the district's LCAP has been eliminated for this year, and as I said, has been replaced with this learning continuity plan. And again, the point of the plan is at this point in the year, with obviously so much that is different and shifted, that we will describe to you in this plan the major decisions that we have made. And then, of course, the decisions we anticipate making, obviously, as health and safety conditions shift and we move into other models of teaching and learning, obviously hybrid being one of them, and we hope ultimately returning to school at full capacity. Tonight, of course, we are doing a presentation for your information and, of course, the community's information. The expectation is that we will come back to you after your feedback this evening and additional input from the community, that we will come back on the 24th with a final draft for your approval. I would like to note that one requirement of this process is that we engage with our District Advisory Council and our District English Learner Advisory Council, the DAC and DLAC. We had a meeting scheduled with that group where, in fact, we also invited all families with students who are English learners, because we wanted to recognize that a lot of this engagement can be particularly challenging for our families that are primarily not English speaking. That meeting unfortunately ran into a Zoom snafu, and so we have rescheduled that meeting for this coming Tuesday, September 15th, and plan the same approach. So we're looking forward to getting additional feedback from our community at that meeting. Joan mentioned early on also that we did both a family and a staff feedback survey. In design, let's say it was really much more feedback than survey. It was very light on some of the traditional approaches of surveying, because the goal was to, again, get feedback and to comply with state guidelines that we had to ensure that stakeholders had an opportunity to submit written comments on the actions and expenditures of the plan. So we ran that survey back to August 27th through last Thursday. And as Dr. Rosas noted, we just got a tremendous amount of great suggestions and feedback that actually, as I go into the content of the plan and as you read, you will see there's a lot of good input that we had that is certainly influencing our thinking. So that's kind of where we are process-wise. I'll try to do a rather brief overview of the contents of the continuity plan, learning continuity plan. Board, you have had it available to you for several days now. It's been posted, of course, for community for a few days now as well. I'll defer to your questions, but let me just provide some brief overview. So the major sections of the plan are, there is first a stakeholder engagement section where we describe the ways in which that we have been soliciting feedback, certainly in our own board meetings, through surveys, coffee chats, a whole variety of strategies. And then we're asked to explain, to provide a summary of that feedback and a description of the impact of that feedback on the plan. So that is the first section of the so-called LCP. The next major section is this section for continuity of learning. And this is broken down into some smaller pieces. The first part is how we are thinking about in-person instructional offerings. Of course, acknowledging we're not there at this time, but we're asked to describe much of the work that was done this summer as we were thinking about the possible return to the hybrid model in the elementary school, and thinking at the middle school level that while we intend to maintain a full-time distance learning program there, we do know there are groups of students both vulnerable and transitioning students that we would like to bring back into the middle school to provide some additional support. Then, of course, there is the section where we talk about distance learning. There is a section there where we need to describe from a curriculum and instruction point of view, how are we going to manage the continuity of being in distance learning to being in hybrid to being back potentially full time this year, and how are we going to ensure there's as little disruption as possible during that time. And again, we spent a good amount of time this summer getting your approval on a variety of curriculum and learning management system changes, which are at the heart of our ability to transition through these different models of teaching and learning. Of course, there's a section where we need to describe how we're ensuring access to computing devices and Wi-Fi connectivity, how we've done it, the purchases we've made, again, which you've played a big role in approving this past many months. There's also a section where we're to describe how we are tracking pupil participation and progress. Basically, how are we tracking attendance? What are we doing if a student in distance learning is present but doesn't seem to be participating? How are we tracking progress through, obviously, teacher grade books and our reporting system? We're expected to also describe the distance learning professional development that we have provided to staff. Of course, we adjusted the start of our student school year in order to allow for additional time for professional development. And so again, those actions and expenditures are captured there. We're also expected to describe staff roles and responsibilities that either are new as a result of distance learning. So have we hired any new staff specifically because of our distance learning model implementation, or how are we adapting roles we already have? So let me just speak to that real specifically. So for example, we made a commitment that every school would have a long-term sub assigned to them to provide support for working with students who have special unique needs, or otherwise being a key support to staff in delivering the distance learning program. Those would be examples of new hires. I mean, we've had long-term subs, of course, before, but these hires were specifically about ensuring quality of programming. An example of an adaptation would be our language and literacy TOSAs. We've had those teachers on special assignment for several years now, but the fact that we have pulled them really specifically into the curriculum development work and the leading of PD around this distance learning curriculum work, we wouldn't be asking TOSAs to do that under typical circumstances. It is because of distance learning. And so we can talk about that as an adaptation and a role, and frankly, an actual expense. We can say there is a portion of their weekly work which is now very specifically about distance learning, and we can track that as an expenditure in this plan. There's also, very importantly, the ways in which we are providing supports for pupils with unique needs. So this includes the traditional LCFF groups of our lower income families, our foster youth, and our English learners, but also, of course, our students with disabilities and any other students who might, for whatever reasons, have unique needs in a distance learning context. So that's, you'll see kind of again, the actions and expenditures we've taken there. And then there is this very important section about talking about pupil learning loss. This is where we describe the adjustments we're making in our assessment system for this year. This is a section where, in many ways, we repeat the actions that we've described in prior sections and sort of just clarify across key groups how we're implementing strategies to specifically support students. And then this is also where we would have the sort of the program monitoring aspect. So I know board, you have raised questions about this in the past, and so you'll see there the actions and descriptions of the proposal we have around how we monitoring. Again, we've talked about coming back in 6th, 10th, and 14th week, and what particular conditions are we going to be focusing on, excuse me, and what are the metrics and measures that we're going to use for that. So that's kind of a place where we do kind of the program monitoring piece. And then kind of equivalent to the continuity of learning, larger bucket of actions, we describe the actions we're taking to support the mental and social and emotional well-being of our students and our staff. Again, additional counseling services, strategies to connect with families, the social emotional learning actions that we're taking and supporting teachers to lead in classrooms. Then there's a section about pupil and family engagement and outreach. And again, this is where we're describing, what are the tiers of support. So imagine that supporting a student social and emotionally begins in the community meeting that a teacher leads in the classroom. But then if we notice that a student is not attending regularly or showing challenges with engagement, what are the things that teacher does to connect with the student and with the family? That's all tier 1 strategies. And then if that is not successful, how the teacher then utilizes and refers a student to school-wide strategies, whether it's a care team or a particular counselor or resource, which is a second tier of engagement and outreach. And then finally, if a school has exhausted most of its strategies, what additional strategies are we trying as a district, as a tier 3 set of strategies? And here, is where, for example, we have a coordinator for to support homeless students, where we can think about the strategies across schools that can be brought to bear to support students who may be struggling with distance learning. And finally, as Dr. Rosas mentioned earlier, there's a section where we describe how we're addressing food insecurity through our school nutrition program. And then lastly, there's a section which actually is not in your information for tonight. It is this increased or improved services for our 3 LCFF groups. Just to say that is a section which is frankly a distillation out of the other sections of what are we specifically doing that increases or improves the services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. So just to say, we wanted to finalize any feedback from you and from our DAC and DLAC, clarify all the actions, and then this last section, as I mentioned, it's a way of pulling and concentrating what are the actions that we check off, yes, are increasing or improving services for these 3 groups. And so we'll be coming back to you on the 24th with that section. And again, there should not be any new content in there. It's just a way to focus what actions are supporting those specific student groups. So with that overview, I turn it back to you to of course, to take public comment and to ask your questions. Thank you. Noelia, I think you might be muted.
Sorry, I forget when I double mute.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, we appreciate that summary. Do we have any clarifying questions before we go to public comment on this one? No? Go ahead, Allison.
My first question was, well, first of all, thank you for your presentation. And I think seeing this plan in the 29 pages, it's evident how much work and thought has been put into this. So Thank you. I was wondering, where does this document go? Is this just something that we keep, or you have to submit it to the state, or what's the process here?
Yeah, it goes to the county actually after this, and then ultimately to the state for not approval, but just for their recording of our plan.
And actually, there's a step in between. So the county has to have it by a certain date. I don't remember exactly what the date is. What is that, the 30th of September?
It's the end of September,
yeah.
Yes.
So, and then they review it, and then they will provide any comments. So if there are questions, concerns, ideas, thoughts that they have, those are to come back to another board meeting. If not, and they just push it on, that's fine. But if there are any ideas or thoughts, they'll come back to you.
Okay, great. And then I was curious on some of these things about the funds. I was wondering how that works. For example, there's a section that says that, I think it's at the first chart, where it talks about bringing back vulnerable students, and it says it's $1 million. Is that how does that work?
Sure. Yeah, and I should clarify that, again, this is where we can look at expenses that we know are specifically supporting students around distance learning. So for example, if we bring back newcomer English learners, because we know that they may have particular challenges in being successful. Now this is bringing them back to support them for distance learning, right? This is not the hybrid approach, but to support them with distance learning. Then there's staff that may already, of course, be in roles in our district who would be supporting them. And we can ascribe to that an expense. So even though there is a newcomer teacher, and perhaps that teacher could be at the middle school level, could be available to work with those students under those circumstances, it's not typical that that teacher would be set up, in effect, facilitating their distance learning while they're at school. It's a slightly different role. And so in that respect, it is an expenditure that we can identify. And so there is some ballparking here as far as numbers, but when we thought about that role type as well as long-term subs helping out, we don't know how long we're going to be in distance learning. So we did the best calculation we could and landed on that expenditure. It could be much less, and it conceivably could be much more.
Okay, so it's kind of more of an allocation of the expenses, or in reality, maybe just allocation of expenses that we are already spending towards those students, and not necessarily an additional $1 million.
That's correct. Yeah, or just to say, and let me just clarify, we're in this document, unlike the traditional LCAP, we don't do the funding breakdown in as much detail as you probably could tell, and nor are there the same sort of metrics and data pieces. So that $1 million could represent funds that we've been given as a result of the pandemic, so some of the COVID funds. It could also be our base funds. Obviously, a teacher, newcomer middle school teacher, is paid out of base funds. Here, they're being paid, but to do very specific distance learning work. So that could be funded out of a variety of sources. So just to clarify that.
Okay, and then my last question was just in terms of this plan, is there anything at the end or during it where we kind of follow up to determine if the plan is working, or if there's changes, or this document it's not a living document, it is what it is, and we move on?
Yeah, I mean, typically what we would do with the normal LCAP is, right, you set specific goals and targets there, and you, particularly around performance, and you measure those and you track those. That is not present in this plan. So in that respect, you are correct. However, there is, as I mentioned, that section which is about program monitoring. So while it's not a monitoring of the plan itself, it is a monitoring of this distance learning, hybrid, reality that we're in. So, rightly, we're not absolved of the responsibility to judge, is this particular approach, like the curriculums we've spent a lot of money on, are they working? We should be asking ourselves that and giving you and our public feedback. Our students learning, we should be bringing to you performance data, but it's not a monitoring of this specific plan in that sense. It's just the monitoring of, is this work bearing positive results?
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other clarifying questions for public comment?
I just want to say thank you, David, for presenting that.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go to public comment.
Okay. Those of you who are attending and would like to make public comment on this particular agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature now within Zoom. Okay. We have one, President Corzo. We have Marcella. President Corzo, 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Marcella?
I didn't expect to be the only one. Thank you. I wanted to just express some appreciation for all of the work that was done in putting together this plan. I was struck by the statement at the very beginning that said, COVID-19 has broken the system. Now is our opportunity to develop an educational program that truly meets the needs of all students. And I think that the changes that I've seen this fall from the spring have definitely been some pretty strong steps in that direction. But when I look at this plan, I'm really excited about the dollar amount that's looked at for bringing back ELLs, bringing back our vulnerable populations in distance learning. And I'm wondering when that's going to happen. I know that a number of students are not currently logged in or logging in right now. And I'm wondering if some of that work can be done while students are at home or in childcare or wherever they currently are. If I didn't see in the plan that there is, I saw that there is curriculum that's been purchased. I saw that there is support that's been purchased, but I didn't see that there is live teachers, paraprofessionals, whoever it is that can provide that support for our most vulnerable students. So I, again, really appreciative of all of the plans that are in there. I do feel like there are some significant needs right now that that there may be some opportunity to support within this learning continuity plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, President Corzo, we have no other hands for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion.
I'll start. Thank you for the presentation. When I read through everything, and it really did illustrate all the hard work that you guys put into it. I was also having sort of flashbacks over the summer as a lot of the things that we talked about over the summer through our 1 a.m. meetings, got in there. Whether it was sort of the new curriculum and the money that we're buying for the new curriculum, or just the distance learning, or even the new counselors and the TOSAs, the description there. I think it's all there. I think, what we went through in terms of the summer was actually a good precursor to actually putting this together in my mind. So I want to thank you all for all the hard work there. There's a couple of points that I wanted to bring out. One, I did want to mention the translation services that we have there as the bullet point for our English language learners. I have heard through the Sanctuary Task Force that has actually been a really popular program, and I hope it stays to be popular, because it's really providing a need to our families who don't speak English. And not just for the families, but for the teachers to actually communicate with them, with the students or with the families. So I think it's a great communication tool. Secondly, I'm really glad you mentioned about when we're talking about mental health and social emotional well-being, that you mentioned, and there's a couple of bullet points there about teacher mental health. The reality, and just like Joe Espinoza spoke earlier tonight in public comment, you know, a lot of teachers are working much longer than they ever thought they would be. And the reality is, like, you know, this is sort of the unprecedented times, and, you know, the fact that they're all learning distance learning, Google Meets, everything online, you know, and dealing with all the technology issues that we hear. I think that that has a real big sort of toll on a lot of the teachers and a lot of the staff and principals. And I think that, you know, sort of having that bullet point, and recognizing that there is some mental health there that we do want to make sure provide services, not just for the students, but for our education staff is really important. And so I really like that idea, and hope that that we can elaborate that or expand that and really provide any services that we need to some of our teachers who need them. So, or anyone who needs them. So, but overall, thank you. I don't have any major questions or comments. Just, you know, thank you for all the work that you guys put into this.
Thank you guys for our the presentation, the update. I know we had a chance to dig in a little bit over our study session as well. I don't have too much. The only thing I just kind of wanted to share is I'm hoping, and this kind of built off of, I believe, maybe Allison's question. I'm hoping that as a part of our kind of monitoring, which we'll do at the 6, 10, 14 week marks, that kind of some of the information that's laid out here can be wrapped up into that. And I am curious to know kind of what are some of the pieces that we're specifically going to be monitoring for. 6 weeks is going to be here before you know it. My assumption is that will be something that will come back to the board, which would that be at our next meeting potentially. But you know, I'm thinking about one of the things that I would like to have some information about, you know, sooner rather than later, is what our current attendance is looking like, and what that looks like by student demographic, and those sorts of things. So I think, you know, a lot of the pieces that are kind of spelled out in here, and not that we'll be talking about every single one of them every single time, but that, you know, particularly that those are just things we can continue to kind of cycle back to, and ensure that we have those touch points here, and that we're, you know, we're kind of communicating how we're just monitoring what's working, what's not working, how we're adjusting, and just continuing to keep that that piece at the forefront. So that's kind of my only comment here. And thank you guys for, you know, all the adapting. And I'm glad to hear so far some of the comments around folks feeling like they're feeling that in the wild, for lack of a better word, and looking forward to kind of, you know, seeing how it continues to evolve.
Anyone else? I will just add that, yeah, I mean, I think it's a very thorough plan, and I would be interested in us, you know, continuing to monitor. I do know that I think I would like to see some students return at some point, but I know that there's just I don't think we're quite there yet. But I do think that hopefully we can start to begin to have those conversations. Anyone else have any comments on this? No? Okay. So thank you for the presentation, and let's move on to our middle school English language development instructional materials adoption.
Okay, Dr. Rosas, I'll go ahead. That's another responsibility of ours. Peter, at this very moment, I think is elevating our wonderful coordinator of English Learner Services, Dale Rogers. Dale will present to you a short slide deck that summarizes the need for a new curriculum for one of our English learner classes, and we're seeking your adoption, your approval of that curriculum tonight. So Dale, please take it away.
Greetings, Superintendent Rosas and esteemed school board members. We are excited to announce that we have designed a middle school academic language and literacy acceleration course specifically designed to meet the unique language and literacy needs, as well as build on the assets of our long-term English learner students. This course is designed to ensure that all of our students leave our district prepared to meet the rigorous A through G requirements that they will encounter in high school. We start, as we always do, with our district theory of action, the L essential practices. They are designed to both guide and hold all San Mateo Foster City School District educators accountable to take collective responsibility for the academic, linguistic, and social emotional needs of our English learners. As I reflect on the tremendous amount of progress that our middle school has made in 2 short years, I would be remiss in this moment not to call attention to the work of our middle school leadership, including principals John Cosmos, Kenyatta Cook, Jeremy Packman, Rosemary Wood, and Heather Morgan, who undertook the at times daunting task of equity-centered master scheduling led by Director Pam Bartfield. This group of leaders have exemplified collective responsibility, and our district owes them a debt of gratitude. San Mateo Foster City School District has a multi-year strategic plan for supporting English learners called the Roadmap for L Achievement. And this, that is articulated into 3 major buckets. So monitoring, evaluation, and accountability for English learners, advancing rigorous instruction, and ensuring high quality language programming. So tonight we're going to be talking about one of 3 language pathways called the Academic Language Acceleration course and the corresponding adopted materials. For those of us who follow trends of English learners at the state and national level, we know there's a significant difference between what our students are capable of achieving and the outcome our systems are producing. This is in part because there is a disconnect between what researchers are telling us our students need to accelerate outcomes for English learners, particularly our LTEL students, and what curriculum producers are providing. The Academic Language Acceleration course focuses on academic language and literacy development and emphasizes challenging text, goal setting, and empowering coaching from the teachers. The key components of learning are writing from evidence, learning how English works, and reading increasingly complex text while engaging in tasks that are extremely complex. The students are supported to engage in texts and tasks that provide opportunities for what are called what is called productive struggle. The academic language acceleration course is designed to dramatically accelerate outcomes for our long-term English learners. In this moment, as districts and schools have abruptly shifted the way they do business, the CDE created a partnership with West Ed led by Dr. Ida Walke. You may remember Dr. Walke from the video I played at the board study session about a year ago. You may also remember Dr. Walke wrote the materials we piloted for the ALAC class last year. So the CDE created a webinar series in collaboration with West Ed, and the exemplar that they provided, they took persuasion across time and space, the materials that we piloted, and showed how to distance those materials in support of long-term English learner students. So we moved from those recommendations and created materials for teacher and student use. Mia Bennett, a language and literacy specialist at Abbott, and I spent the summer distancing our academic language acceleration course materials to support our teachers with the smoothest transition possible into this brand new course designed to meet the unique needs of our long-term English learners. We did this following the guidance of the CDE, the Council of Great City Schools, and the guidance from Achieve the Core. The lessons are designed to be delivered either synchronously or asynchronistically. We provided teacher booklets and student booklets printed and then distributed them with enough materials to get them to October break. We pre-recorded all of the writing mini lessons, the content videos, we created gallery walks, and we also recorded ourselves reading the complex text for an additional layer of support for access for students. And then we also ongoing are updating a model Google Classroom so that teachers can copy the model Google Classroom into their ALAC Google Classrooms. All of the language and literacy is taught while students are learning about compelling topics. The first unit is called America's Long History of Protest, and it starts with the 1960s civil rights movement, then shifts to early protests that ushered in our great country, and it will end with a look at modern day protests. The course focuses on academic language and literacy and emphasizes, again, challenging text and goal setting and empowering pedagogy. Key components of the learning are writing from evidence, learning how English works, and reading increasingly complex texts while engaging in text-based academic discussions. The students are supported to engage with texts in ways that will build on our students' background while also developing their linguistic resources. In short, this class is designed to be hard, but we know that all students can achieve at high levels with the right supports. We are excited to announce that we have decided to make our materials open source, and that we know of 2 other districts that are currently using the materials. In Oakland Unified, Amy Stauffer, the middle school language and literacy specialist, has met with us and is using our materials as part of her professional development for middle school language teachers there. So we'll continue our collaboration with that team. And then finally, I just wanted to introduce our brilliant middle school language and literacy team that we have put in place to support our classroom practitioners as they navigate new course, new curriculum, new context. This is a huge lift for our teachers, and we are listening ongoing to their feedback, and we'll continue to iterate alongside them as we will provide quality, usable instructional materials in a distance or hybrid setting in all of our middle school language pathways. Thank you so much.
So we wanted Dale to go into that detail with you because, you know, it is an unusual circumstance. We are actually recommending to you for adoption. We might call them homegrown materials that sound like are rapidly being used in other places. This is to Dale's point, is that there are no state recommended curriculum for middle school long-term English learners. And so we're intent under Dale's leadership, certainly, to not let ourselves rest on that lack of available curriculum. And so we're bringing to you tonight this plan, as Dale described. We're through October with the development of materials and intend to continue it through the balance of the year.
I just want to say how much work something like that is. I'm not sure how aware everyone would be of writing curriculum from the ground up, and that kind of work under the pressure that we were under this summer to create is really very impressive, and that someone's already picking it up. All right, that's pretty exciting. So thank you, and to you and the team that did that. And thank you to the teachers who are piloting it and giving you the feedback so that it will even become better. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so proud. But okay, do we have clarifying questions? Okay, do we have public comment on this?
Okay. Anybody who would like to make public comment that's participating in our meeting today on this particular agenda item, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom now. Okay, President Corzo, we have one for public comment at this time. 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Marcella?
I just need 30 seconds. I want to just say thank you so much, Dale, and thank you to your team. This is exactly the kind of curriculum that is relevant and important. And having had to design curriculum, I fully understand how intensive it is to do it and do it right. And so as a parent, I'm so happy that this curriculum is going to be implemented within our program. It's relevant to our community, to our families. And so thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, President Corzo, I don't believe we have any other public comment at this time.
Thank you. I'm trying not to cry, to be honest with you. I'm just so grateful, and I'm so excited that other districts are picking this up, and that just goes to show like how valuable it is already. And I think we need to make sure that the state can use it for everyone. So I'd love to explore that. But yeah, I think I'm emotional about it because I know so many people that could have used this a long time ago, and I'm just so excited for the students that will be given the gift of language development and all that brings, and all those opportunities that will open up for them because of it. So thank you to you and the team. And yeah, again, I'm just so proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale, for sharing, and to you and your team for all of the work that you've engaged in. I mean, as Joan mentioned, at a time when there's so many things going on, to to really show through action how important all of our students are, how we're prioritizing students who have needs that we haven't met, how we're dedicated to doing that despite the world around, us. And so I think it just, I want to say it sends a strong message, but it's not about the message. It's not about that, right? It is about that for our kids and their families. Just that they are seen and heard. And I, as also someone who has written curriculum, I get how time intensive that is. And the fact that, I know it was a huge lift. And so, really grateful for you for doing that, and appreciated you just sharing the concept that this is hard, and it should be hard because we know that our kids can do so much, and we need to expect that and provide the appropriate support, of course, but we owe it to them to provide them with that opportunity and that experience. And so I am looking forward to continuing to hear how it's going and to see how it spreads. That's also really exciting that it's open source and that it's available, because, the idea is that we want it to benefit as many kids as possible, right? And so I think that that's also really admirable. So just really grateful to you for your leadership, and also grateful to all of the folks that have been involved in the process. And I really do hope that we can cycle back to this in a couple of months and have an update, and hope that this will continue to be a bright spot in the midst of, again, kind of to the point I think that was made before, right? Really, there are just so many opportunities, and this likely would have happened anyways, but this pandemic and just shifts in education have provided so many opportunities for us to just be thinking about things differently. And again, this probably is something that was on the radar anyways, as something that we wanted to do, but I just think these kinds of things, I look forward to seeing and hearing more about how we're innovating and providing increased opportunities and access and rigor to our kiddos. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I commend you all for the creation of this and really taking into account all children, all students' needs. And the creation of curriculum is definitely challenging. And so for you guys to tackle that in this environment, and have it be adopted by other districts, how awesome. I just thank you. And you can't tell right now, but I'm giving you a standing ovation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll just say the same thing that everybody else has said. Just thank you so much for your leadership and for innovating in this way. I think it's great that you're able to come up with a way to address our students' immediate needs here. And so I think this is really exciting. And I just thank you and your team for all of your time and your hard work and effort in this. And so I think, bravo.
Hey, Dale. Just thank you as well. And to your team. I think, it's funny, I knew that you worked on other things besides the Sanctuary Task Force, but now I get to see what you were actually working on. And I knew that you guys were working hard on a bunch of things, but to actually see the stuff come forward to us and how it's going to make a difference, I think it's really fantastic. So again, thank you. Everyone else said thank you, but thank you to you and your whole team. I think it's really fantastic. So thank you.
Am I understanding correctly that there may be some additional materials that will come forward?
There will. So we did this 1960s civil rights movement up until October. We're writing the next two portions that will take us past the holidays, and then we are exploring, and it will depend on the level of text that we can get, because all of our work is rooted in complex text for our students. But what we would like to build is migration stories unit. So all humans are migratory. All of us have stories, and we would like to build a unit after this the long history of protest that lifts those migration stories, but again through that cycle of complex text, academic discussion, and evidence-based writing.
So in response to what Trustee Watkins was asking, kind of to come back, you will be coming back because we're going to have another round. And that's what I thought I understood. So this is the first of several units, and we're asking for adoption of this, and then we'll bring the next units. And I said, didn't you want to buy something? And you all wanted to create your own, and it's more powerful. So that I'm appreciative of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm like waiting because I don't want this moment to end, but it has to. Thank you. Moving on.
Don't need a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the adoption.
You're right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Trustee Proctor with a second. Roll call vote. Trustee Chin.
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock.
Oh yeah.
Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
And a yes from me as well.
Thank you.
Approved. Yay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Now moving on to our Chromebook purchase update.
Right. So the reason that I did not put this on consent and I did put this on an action item was to just make sure that we were all aware that we had previously approved a purchase of these Chromebooks from a vendor. The vendor had said that they thought they could get them to us in October. That was great. But then we can't come to find out that indeed they were having the same troubles as everyone else as far as supply across the world. And so we did find another vendor that actually gave us a little bit better price. And that is why you're seeing another one of these orders. So this would then replace the order that ended up being something that would be shipped all the way into December. So I'm asking for your approval of this Chromebook purchase.
Any questions on this? Any public comment?
Okay, for any attendees that would like to make public comment on this particular agenda item, please use the raise your hand functionality on Zoom now. President Corzo, I have no hands raised for public comment.
Okay, any discussion on this item? No? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I think I heard a second, but it wasn't clear.
Second, it was me, Shara.
Thank you, Shara. Roll call vote, Trustee Chin?
Yes, and thank you, Peter, for all your hard work on this.
Thank you, Peter. Trustee Hitchcock?
Yes.
Trustee Proctor?
Yes.
Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to our district-wide shade structure project, ADIS Architect Amendment number 3.
Yes, good evening. We're bringing back this amendment to ask for your approval this evening. And at our last board meeting, you had asked if we could provide you with some additional information about a possible opportunity about incorporating solar into this particular project. So I want to thank and recognize Mark Sherrill and thank the ADIS architecture team who helped us compile some information in response to your inquiry. We provided to you in the cover sheet a recap of ADIS's feedback regarding the possibility of incorporating shade into solar shade panels into this particular structure. I'm happy to read through these items. They gave us 6 different categories of what their findings were. Very quickly, I'll read through them, but they share the district cannot maximize the solar panel area because these structures have gable roofs. There are shade and trees that surround the structures, which will reduce the efficiencies if they are to be included. Placing solar structures on the north-facing roofs would reduce solar efficiency by approximately 30% for the solar panels. These structures do not have a metal roof that will accept solar, and therefore the structures would need to be redesigned to meet the structural requirements to accept the panels, then resubmitted to DSA for approval and review. We currently have materials on site for the current shade structure, and you previously approved a contract with a contractor for the structure to be installed. So that's the feedback. You had asked us to get some feedback from ADIS, and that's their feedback to you this evening. The other bits of information we share with you for our community as well to understand, that's also captured in this cover sheet, is we also looked at other options for solar panel at both the Abbott site as well as Burrell. And included in your cover sheet, we've shared that the roof of the Abbott gym can accommodate solar panels of about 2,500 square feet for about 840 kilowatts and approximately budgeted between roughly $1 million to $1.5 million. The district's also looking at the possibility of solar on the Burrell locker rooms and modular buildings, as well as options at Beach Park Elementary. And so we also captured for you here too, Beach Park has solar-ready roof structures, as well as conduits to the roof. So if we want to continue to explore that for you, we can do that. So our recommendation tonight is to move forward with the project as it was originally designed, now that we have this feedback from ADIS. And we are in conversations regarding the larger solar aspirations that the district has. We've talked about the net zero energy district as an aspirational goal for the district and what that might entail. And within that umbrella of options, there are options if the district to realize 100% of the savings generated from those panels to if we're interested in just a project that takes advantage of solar and we get some fee or some return on that investment, but there might be a less cost for the district to have those types of returns. So again, we're asking for you to approve it tonight, and we want to bring back to you some further information regarding options for solar and bring it back to you at a future board meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any clarifying questions?
I do. So one, thank you for looking into this. I'm very interested in saving the earth in any way. So solar is a big deal for me. placing the solar structures on the north-facing roofs would reduce the solar efficiency by 30%, I think you said. So I was just wondering, like, that's still 70% that we would still receive solar energy. And I feel that's a significant amount, but I don't know what that like equates to, which is what you kind of stated earlier into the energy saved, if it would.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think when you start to look at it, Rebecca, about what the footprint of that roof is relative to the demand for energy that the site has, and then you look at the investment to have it yield some solar efficiencies, and then when you factor in the, over time those panels, what they produce kind of diminishes over time too. So we could do a more elaborate evaluation for you about what 70% would yield in terms of what the capital cost would be and what it would take in terms of what that return on investment might look like for that footprint. I think, in other words, I think in some ways, I think what Ada is saying too, that if you're going to spend money for that type of capital investment, you might look for other opportunities where it would yield at the 100% performance level as opposed to 70%.
Right.
So
right.
if that helps you with your decision.
No, I appreciate it, and I don't want to stall this decision, but I just have questions.
Sure.
One of them, just as simple as the shade structure that has been purchased. It's located, I believe Joel said, at Knowles. Is it in use? And if we remove it to put it where it was supposed to go, is Knowles going to be
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rebecca, but all the components are stored at Knowles. It still has to be erected, right?
Okay. I was like, poor Knowles. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate you again looking into kind of what solar would take. And I really appreciate the fact that you're going to be looking at other existing structures like Abbott and Burrell and just kind of continue that. So I appreciate that. So I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, public comment, please.
Okay. Anybody participating in our audience today would like to make public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom now. President Corzo, we have no hands for public comment.
Thank you. Opening it up for discussion.
I just want to thank you, Patrick and Mark and the rest of the team over there for answering the questions. I think that, I initially had some concern. I actually initially didn't have any concern, but then when we started talking about it, I wanted to raise some questions. So I'm glad that we actually went through and looked and analyzed the possibility of solar using this shade structure. I'm personally okay with this moving forward after the analysis has been done. I am intrigued by the other projects mentioned, but obviously we can't make a decision on that now as it wasn't advertised. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you for all your work.
Actually, I just want to bring you to the recommended motion. It said based on, actually in the cover, it says based on board direction. District staff will continue to research options and provide additional information regarding solar options at a future board meeting. So you are, one of the things we are asking is to move this project along, but also to confirm that you do want staff come back with more information on solar projects that are viable for the district. So just want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are seeking that.
Thank you for clearing that. I appreciate it. I'm wondering going forward if the district is interested in becoming a net zero energy district, and just moving forward with what that would look like, time frame, amount, and if we want to consider a resolution to include solar in all future builds going forward. So maybe
you have incorporated into your facilities master plan the comments that were shared with the board regarding the net zero energy. So that's already incorporated into your facilities master plan for moving forward. So as a component of it. So that will assist in generating that information for you to consider as we move forward.
So, thank you for Dr. Roses for the clarification on the recommendation. I missed that last sentence there. I absolutely would recommend, and I guess I can do it with a motion that, providing that no one else has comments, but I'll motion to approve the shade structure with the additional direction that staff goes back and explores solar being added at other sites. And one just thought about that is, we may, as Trustee Hitchcock had just mentioned, that, how do we go about that, and whether or not we, have a blanket resolution or something that, states what we said in the facilities master plan, and that we will continue to look at this with a general timeline, knowing that, this is not going to happen overnight, but that there's an intent for this to happen. And I think that we could probably do something like that. So, so overall, my motion is to approve the shade structure with the direction to explore solar further.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Chin?
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock?
Yes.
Trustee Proctor?
Yes.
Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to resolution number 05-2021, adoption of GAN limit for 2019-2020.
Yes, thank you. On an annual basis, we go through this cycle for you of looking at the GAN limit, and we look back at the prior year, and we also are confirming the GAN limit for the current year. And the cycle is that when you revisit it, there are adjustments to this GAN limit that was established, and there are factors that can influence that GAN limit, the final dollar amount. And there's a resolution that's brought forward to the board that either says that the GAN limit is adjusted higher or lower, because all districts, the vast majority of all districts, make those adjustments primarily higher. And so that's what you have in front of you this evening, is a resolution that is recognizing there's an adjustment of the higher amount. I would share with you that the largest component of that adjustment has to do with the parcel tax dollars that were collected and incorporated into it. That's the adjustment. And that'll be part of moving forward while we have the parcel in place, what your GAN limit moving forward will incorporate. And so although there is an adjustment of this higher amount, there's nothing the district has done that's been incorrect. We're not at risk of any adjustments or losing any funds associated with that. This is a cycle we do. We go through and we revisit this at the after the fiscal year is closed, and we have the final dollar amounts, and we also take a look at the current year that we're in. And so the resolution in front of you tonight speaks to both those things, and looking back as well as looking forward. So we're making a recommendation that you approve the resolution that's been brought forward tonight for the 1920 GAN limit and the appropriation for the 1920 fiscal year.
Thank you, Patrick. Do we have any clarifying questions? Okay, moving on to, oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
It wasn't a question. It was just more of a thanks for stating that it's not something that, we're getting in trouble for. It's par for the course, and others do it as well. So thanks, because I was nervous about that. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, public comment on this item?
Anybody who would like to make public comment on this particular item, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom now. Okay, President Corza, there are no hands raised for public comment.
Thank you. Okay, do we have discussion or a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to
I'll second the motion, whatever, I'm sure.
Whatever it was. It was a motion to approve resolution number 0520-21, adoption of GAN limit.
Second.
Okay, thank you both. Roll call vote. Trustee Chin?
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock?
Yes.
Trustee Proctor?
Yes.
Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me as well. The motion carries, and we are moving on to 2019-2020 unaudited actuals draft.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen with you momentarily here. Okay, can you all see the slides okay? Okay, so just really quickly, process-wise, I want to share with you that this district has had a practice of bringing forward a draft of the unaudited actuals at your first board meeting in September, and then bring forward for your approval after you've had a chance to review the draft, the actual unaudited actuals. We've completed all the SACS reports. There'll be a very, very minor change. I'll talk about that in a little detail in a little bit, what that minor change will be between now and then. But again, the practice has been you see a draft and then you go through and approve it at the second board meeting. We've talked to the county about it, and they said that they don't foresee a real need for us to do this again in the future. And Dr. Rosas and I have talked about that as well too. So next year we'll plan on just bringing it to you for your first board meeting in September. If that's acceptable to you from a practice perspective. Okay, and so tonight what we've done for you is we're going to share with you a couple of recaps of what your actual expenditures and revenues were, and then we'll talk about some of the financial highlights, and then we'll talk from a process perspective some of the upcoming events. These slides focus on the general fund, and your unaudited actuals have all the different funds incorporated into them. We've shared in this first slide set here the actual revenues in the general fund. We walked through all the different sources, the revenue limit, federal, state, local, for what your final dollar amount is. And then in the next slide set, what we've done for you here, which is extracted from one of the SACS reports, but what it calls out for you is what the variances were between the last set of financial information that you saw for the fiscal year 1920, which was your estimated actuals, and now in your unaudited actuals, which is that large packet of information you have. These are some of the highlights from a revenue perspective, what the variances are in the revenues. And we've captured these categories for you at a high level, what those variances are associated with. You'll see overall here, there's a revenue increase between your estimated actuals and your unaudited actuals, about $1 million. And it's broken down into those different categories. On the low control funding formula side, there was a slight increase in your property taxes. On the federal revenue side, there's decreases for deferred revenues for some of your Title I, II, and III programs. So a decrease. Other state revenue increase of $1.1 million, and it's comprised of a couple of key components: decrease in your lottery funding, a decrease in your TUPE amount, and then the increase in your STIRS and PERS on behalf. And just as a recap for your STIRS and PERS on behalf, it's really, we have to reflect in our financial statements the state's contribution to STRS and PERS on behalf of our employees. So this adjustment happens every year at the end of the year. There's an increase on your revenue side for the state component, and then there's a corresponding increase on your expenditure side. These two items zero out. It has no effect on your ending fund balance, but it's a part of GASB 68 that the local entities have to have these dollar amounts reflected. So that's where that other state revenue adjustment is. It's not that we gained money from this. And then we also, at the end of the year, we recognize some donations from PTA, and we had some adjustments to our actual interest that we earned of about $100,000. So combined, about $1 million adjustment to your revenues. And then on the expenditure side, we give you a recap here of your actual expenditures. And again, if you go into the SACS report, you'll see there's these combined general fund expenditures correspond to the SACS reports. And then I'll walk you through what some of the variances are on your actual expenditures. And what the variance we saw in large part where some of the variances are associated with are related to the pandemic and the impact it had on us not incurring some expenditures. And we'll walk through some of that with you too. We catch for you on the top here what the overall decrease in expenditures equated to about $11.4 million. About $7.6 million that was on the restricted side and about 3.7 on the unrestricted side. And so walking through the different categories, you see here we had some variances in our salaries for both certificate and classified related to unfilled vacancies during and after the second interim. And also some Title I and supplemental carryover are factored into that. The benefits that you see here of this increase of $879,000 is what we spoke about a few moments ago about the STRS on behalf, the increase of the STRS on behalf of the income side, and a corresponding increase on the benefits side, offset by some reductions in benefits as well too, associated with some of these unfilled positions. Okay, so that's a net adjustment. And then these next two categories where there's some bigger dollars in here, there's these books and supplies carryover and services and other operating expenditures carryover. There's these reductions largely due to the textbook adoption not being implemented in books and supplies. So a significant dollar amount in that related to books and supplies of the textbook adoption not being implemented. And then we also have some other dollars here to equipment replacement, lottery, site donations, and facility use, and then supplemental carryovers, a big portion of this as well too, related to that, to those things I spoke to. On the services and operating expenses carryover side, we have a variance in what was actually incurred for routine restricted maintenance. And we had about $3 million in Measure V partial tax carryover. Earlier tonight, we were talking about how we've added, Dave was speaking about some counselors we've added. We've used some of that carryover to fund those counselors in the current year. So that's a big portion of that $8 million is $3 million of partial tax carryover. And then Title I and Title III dollars that we're carrying over. We've got some restricted lottery money too that was not spent, again related to the pandemic, and we've got carryover in that category. And then we had some variances in some of our NPS and other special education planned expenditures. And so collectively that adds up to about $8.1 million. Okay, so that does fall to your bottom line, and it goes, looks up above here. We look at 7.6 on the restricted side. On the unrestricted side, the vast majority of that is supplemental, and so although it's categorized as unrestricted, it's restricted from a practical standpoint. Okay. All right, then just we highlighted for you two upcoming events. We've got the unaudited actuals we'll bring back to you again for your approval on the 24th. We got our first interim report coming in December, and then the audited financial statements we'll bring forward to you in January. Okay, so that's a high-level recap for you on the general fund, some of the factors that influence that, and the impact that the pandemic had on us not incurring some expenditures which were planned to be incurred. Okay, so any questions you might have?
Hi, Patrick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I can't see anyone right now, so I'm just
Let
going
me,
to
let me exit out. I'll stop the share. Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so I couldn't tell if anybody else was going to ask a
Sure.
question. So my only question is, I wasn't sure about the timing of the CARES Act money, or I guess is that, did we get that for 2021 versus 1920? Is that the timing, or is that reflected somewhere in our
So tonight we're looking at the unaudited actuals. And
Yeah.
so the CARES Act, there was some SB 117 money that did come through, so it was reflected. But the vast majority of all that CARES Act funding came through. Recall we're having those workshops, right? And we talked about that. So that's reflected in your current year budget. And there are different clocks on when those dollars have to be spent. A lot of what David spoke about earlier tonight too. There is a trailer bill that's been introduced that would like to see those dollars extended for the whole fiscal year. So our plan is taking that in consideration, whether we have to spend a big portion of those dollars by December, or whether those are extended through the entire fiscal year. Okay. So
fantastic. Thank you. That's all the only question I had.
Okay, sure.
I had a quick question. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we had an increase in revenue of 1 million-ish and a decrease in expenses of 11 million-ish, which is about 12 million. So what's the plan for that money? Is that
so, for example, Alice, I said,
for
example, some of that carryover from the parcel tax is committed to the counselors we've hired in the current year. Textbook adoption, David can speak to that. Routine restricted maintenance, we'll spend time on that. There is no shortage of work to be done in the district, right? So, but again, the pandemic, altered a lot of plans, right? And so, but those dollars are restricted, and those restricted dollars can only spend on certain things. And again, a large part of that, the unrestricted side falls under supplemental. So David will be incorporated into the overall LCAP that you'll see in December. The official LCAP has to take that in consideration. So we're reviewing what the carryover is from the current year and integrating that with, I should say, the prior year, 1920, with the 2021 funds. And that has to be all mapped out for you as well, too. So that's a big chunk of those dollars. And then the title programs, again, those are restricted what those we spent on. And we can give you some more updates about those particular programs and what's going to be done with those particular dollars now that there's some carryover. As we get into the first interim, which is the next report you'll see, then you'll see some of those dollars budgetarily, how those are going to be addressed at the first interim. So October 31st is your first interim. You'll see it in December. We'll have a lot more information to share with you in December about how some of those dollars are being spent. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so a lot of this is kind of, I just wanted to make sure that it's clear to everyone that a lot of this is earmarked for specific things, and it's not just like a windfall of money that we can now do something exciting with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that Patrick and I talked about, is that that really is not the case. But a perfect example is we couldn't do our social studies adoption, and actually now we're probably glad that we didn't, because we want to tie it in with our ethnic studies. But there was $3 million set aside for that, because those books do cost a lot of money. So it is work that maybe we couldn't complete last year.
Okay, and then the other thing I just wanted to clarify, just because I've been involved with the PTAs, that like the PTAs don't generally just give a donation, and so this is really the PTAs funding like programs and staff and things like that.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Okay, any public comment on this item or other questions? Sorry. Okay, public comment.
Okay. For those in our audience, if you would like to make public comment on this particular agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom now. President Corzo, we have no hands raised for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Opening it up for discussion. Any discussion?
No, thank you, Patrick, for your presentation and informing us of all the things.
And I want to thank Cynthia Shea, who is a retired CBO, who was did put forth really a Herculean effort. Her and Blanca Cervantes, as well as the business team who put together. It's a huge endeavor to put this together. So I wanted to thank and recognize Cynthia for all of her dedication to help us out in the transition while we brought in a new director. So she helped us out tremendously. So thank you to Cynthia.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Oh.
Sorry, wait, there is no motion. This is for presentation. Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to board member statements and requests for future agenda items.
I just say one. Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rebecca. No, you go.
I just wanted to remind everybody to attend the CDAC's parent training on the IEP process on September 29th at 7 p.m. And of course, save the date of October 23rd, as you will want to be a part of this historic event, the San Mateo Foster City Education Foundation's first ever live virtual gala lights camera auction. So come and be a part of this inaugural celebration. And if you know of any business that would like to support our event, please contact Shara to find out about sponsorship opportunities and auction lots needed. She can be reached at her email of sharawatkins@smfc.k12.ca.us. Thank you.
Great. Any other statements?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up on a topic that Trustee Chin brought up earlier, in that looking at Measure X, especially like the phase 2 projects, I did want to kind of look at the timeline there. I think that it's important for me to bring to you some of the conversations that are happening, like that I'm hearing from, and people specifically in Foster City. And I know that this is probably happening in San Mateo as well, but people are asking, especially now that we do have beach parks, they're ready to like move on to the next phase. And so just kind of being able to clarify for them. And again, I'm sure with San Mateo, the same conversations are happening. So I think it'd be nice to be able to provide some clarity as in terms of the timeline of the phase 2 projects. And what that might look like. And we've talked a bit about Bowditch and how we would look at that as kind of a whole project. And so if there was a way that the architects or somebody could come back and say, you know, this is phase 2, this is what the timeline would be if we only had the Measure X funds, and then maybe if we had more funds from, you know, Measure T or whatever, wherever money will come from. This would be the timeline on a bigger scale project, just so we can provide some clarity there. And then my only other comment was, yesterday was really scary that it was so dark, and with the fires, it just kind of made me feel kind of sad, and I don't know, I think just not seeing the sun was hard for me. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that we're all here together, and I hope that we all everybody on the line and everybody stays healthy, and acknowledge that there's some people that are going through a rough time. And I wish everyone health and safety, and I'm glad that we're here together tonight.
I'll just echo Trustee Proctor's comments about Bowditch. I think the idea that, you know, we should come back with sort of a timeline with the Measure X projects, and at the same time have a general conversation about Bowditch, because we do want to make sure that, you know, whatever happens in November, the idea is that we want to make sure that we're prepared to make some sort of adjustments possibly, or have a plan in place for Bowditch. And I think how we publicly talk about that would be really great. And just going off of Trustee Proctor's comments about it being dark yesterday, you know, I know I sort of sound like a squeaky wheel sometimes when it comes to solar, but yesterday when it was all dark, not that we would get a lot of energy from solar, but the idea is that, like climate change is real and, we're having these wild swings, and the fact that, if we can do something, it'd be great for us to do something. And, solar is one way. I also do worry about the air, and, it's crazy. I know like right now our air during our meeting right now is really bad. And so it's really bad. And I do think about those families who don't have the ability to, to somewhat stay sheltered somewhat in place, who have to open the window. I mean, thankfully it wasn't really hot today, but it's hard. So I do also want to think about all those families and everyone who are having hard times right now. So.
I will jump in. Yeah, echo all of that. I hope everyone's hanging in there amidst what feels like continues to be one thing after another. And I know it's a lot. And I will say for me, it's definitely starting to take a toll. I felt like for a while, I was like powering through. And, everyone is in a different place, in a different situation. And we definitely have members in our community that are really struggling in a variety of different ways. And so just sending all of our care and support. And if there are ways that, our district can support you and your families, definitely, reach out to your child's teacher, counselor, et cetera. And I know that our teachers and our staff and our administrators are looking out as well, but everyone take care of themselves. And in terms of future agenda items, I'll echo the Bowditch conversation, so looking forward to that. I know that we had comment around Montessori and priority and received communication on that. And I would just like to say that I would like to bring back that conversation for a larger board discussion. At the time, we had talked about this not just being a North Shore View priority. What do we want to do about neighborhood priority for all of our magnet programs? There are 4 magnet programs that don't have traditional boundaries. It's part of a larger conversation around balance, SES balance in those programs. And so I think that it's worthy of bringing back for discussion. So I would like to request that as well.
Thank you, Trustee Wilkins. I will just end on giving kudos to our district staff for the work that they're doing right now to really to do our district's part in giving our community food security and looking at the really meaningful outreach that they're doing, and looking into delivering and making sure that our community is not struggling with how to meet their most basic needs. Please, if you know of a family that is having issues with food security, please let them know that we are here to help them. And yeah, I think it's 18 and younger, but there should not be any kids going hungry in our community. Thank you everyone for your comments. I'll end it there. And moving on to future meeting dates.
And there's a list of future meeting dates, but most important, your next board meeting, which is going to be September the 24th.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Trustee Chin.
Yes.
Trustee Hitchcock.
Yes.
Trustee Proctor. Trustee Watkins?
Yes.
And a yes from me. We're adjourned at 9:53 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.